Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Rob, here once more with you on a rainy Sunday morning. Got my coffee. It's time to talk. So, it's Sunday, which means that it is 1 week since I put forward ManyQuest before the masses. And we've got 2 responses. Not quite what I was hoping for, but I'll take 2 responses over no responses. I've had, according to the YouTube page, it's had 44 views and received 2 responses. Which is fine. 44 eyeballs on my game is more than most, which is cool. I advertised it all over the place, so that was fun. But yeah, we are going to go forward and pick one of these 2 responses. And I've got my laptop right over here, and I'm going to go over them. I thought since there's only 2, I can honor them by reading the responses before you and kind of, picking out the details about it that'll provide the challenges for the next session. And talk about, how they relate to the rules of the game, which is cool. I hope you enjoy this. So, we have 2 by Amnusian's The Escapist Club and Neil Kammer. Spoiler alert, I do know Neil. I meet with him day to day, just about, under normal circumstances. And got him excited about the idea of ManyQuest and a lot of my ventures as I'm going forward, which is cool. He even was nice enough to be in a podcast with me once, so that was nice. The second one is a new subscriber, The Escapist Club, and both of them put through some fairly lengthy responses, so let's go over those, shall we? The first one that I have is Last In, First Out, was by Neil 3 days ago. His response is, Dirk briefly gazes upon the situation presented to himself and makes note of the additional passageways leading into the treacherous dungeon. I did reference that there were multiple entrances, but didn't specifically mention that they went by any of them through this route. But that's fine. This is a good example of player license. If something isn't expressly spelled out by the storyteller, story weaver, it's no foul for a player to, interject some of their own ideas and assumptions into the game. And it's only if the story weaver rules that such things are impossible or improbable that those probably should be squelched. After that, yeah, I have no problem honoring that idea that they walk by several other entrances. One to the left and one to the right, both infinitely more appealing than the one before him, clad with a golden harbinger of evil. Sure. Yeah, I didn't in my depiction show multiples because, well, I'm not going to get into the reasons and everything, but I have no problem with widening out the room and adding a couple of doors to fulfill this request if this turns up. Each door has a message scrawled in a text unfamiliar to Dirk, surprising considering his well-traveled livelihood. Again, this is player agency, adding on little details like that. And by the fact that the text is unfamiliar to Dirk doesn't make me come up with whatever it is, and doesn't make me shoot down some idea that he had for what the doors individually say, which that's actually a nice courtesy. Using his tactful wit, social dexterity, and the meager chit he earned for himself while in the city, far above him now, he resolves to play on the spirits of the guardsmen, tired from the tasks of the day, and eagerly awaiting the drink and women that their own modest earnings will afford them. Okay, yeah, this is again, he's making this easy for me to play this out. It's subtly nudging things in the favor of Dirk that these guardsmen are, buyable and in a somewhat weakened state by their duty, which, fine with me. As he knows that within the forgotten depths that may likely play eternal host to his lifeless body. This is some great narration here. There may not be any need for coin, and that the possession of a few ducats seems frivolous. Okay. Dirk attempts to purchase passage through one of the more inviting portals, relying on the fates on the universe to provide him with a safer alternative than the one first chosen for him. So basically, it's a long way of saying Dirk wants to bribe the guards to let him go into a better dungeon door, which is an interesting idea that I had not considered when I filled out this narration. And this is part of being a game master here, is taking what the players give you. It's not just what you give the players and then the players regurgitate. Sometimes the players throw things back at you if you run a particular way. I didn't spell out the entirety of the room, and I really just, by narration, a very brief narration, got to the point where they're standing before the door. So, yeah, this is an interesting exchange from a person who doesn't have a great deal of experience in role-playing, but he intuitively is going into it with his own little bit of narration adding on, which makes the story richer. Some game masters have a problem with this. Some game masters don't like players putting words in their mouth. I find it a challenge and more interesting than if I was the only one telling what is otherwise potentially a very bleak story. So, okay, that's option number one. Option number two is by the Escapist Club. And also, if you catch this video, I'm very happy to have you in. Thank you very much, and thank you especially for this comment for this project. I do appreciate it tremendously. Alright, so his response is also a little lengthy, which is good. We'll go over that. Dirk does not wait to reach the door. He considers his situation. If it's true that the woman he met is the daughter of the Thieves Guild leader, maybe she has the ability to help him. Would she? Hey, they hit it off, didn't they? It's a long shot, but you've got to try everything. Can't send her a message directly, but... Okay, here we go again. This is a case where I only mentioned briefly that Dirk met with her, talked for about an hour, and she ran off. I didn't really go into what they talked about, how Dirk was doing with her. I didn't even give her a name. But he pounced on this, he or she, to be honest, I don't know, pounced on that and is like, this could be an important element for this story. Again, something I did not originally think about. I was like, okay, here's a door, how do the players deal with this as an adventurer? These guys, or gal, immediately latched on to all the other stuff that I put out that really wasn't, I thought, pertinent to the situation where he was going to be put into, and it is expanding the story and expanding the world realistically through this extra narration. So I'm excited for both of them, honestly. Once out of earshot of guild leader and alone with the guards, okay, so we're going back in time a little bit here, but I'm fine with that. Dirk begins improvising a catchy tune, singing about how a helpless victim of circumstance, will surely perish in this cruel dungeon. However, he continues, at least he has had the joy of meeting a Wonder Woman, and as intelligent and witty as she is beautiful. He will cherish the memory. I did say that she was quite pretty. He will cherish the memory of that meeting, and he knows if he must die, he will have that at least to cheer his last moment. He only hopes that he, in turn, made some small impression on her, and that she will remember their encounter fondly. His intent is for the guards to pass the song on, and hopefully it will get back to the woman. Okay, so this is interesting because to progress this particular narration, I need to come up with a song. I'm not opposed to that. You might have to put up with some singing, but I'm not opposed to that. It's actually kind of exciting to think about for me. And I very carefully usually don't sing. I don't consider myself to have a very good voice or sense of pitch or anything like that. So this This could be a first for me, if this comes up. Interesting. His intent is for the guards to pass the song on and hopefully we'll get back to the woman. I like that line because it doesn't leave ambiguity to everything else that was said. I like the style of how he said, he framed the song and then told me what the intent was of this whole thing. Was so that the guards pass the song on and hopefully it'll get back to the woman. Now, the only problem I have Game Master-wise is that these guards are in the room. Dirk is going to go through a door, and then who knows what's going to happen. If he dies in the first room, then that won't have any impact, because even if she hears about it, even if I do a knock it out of the park song, the guards won't be able to pass it on in time to save Dirk. So as far as helping him along, I'm a little curious as to how effective that will be, but I'm not taking anything away from it. It's got style and I like it. And who knows, it may have some impact in the future if it comes up. Now, at the door, Dirk examines it carefully for hidden mechanics. Could be a trap here. If so, it's probably not lethal. That would spoil the audience's fun. Okay, standard adventuring 101. You see a door, especially a funny-looking door, you check that sucker for traps. So that's a good thought right there. The first response didn't even involve dealing with that particular door, so in order to take that session, we're going to have to kind of stop action still being at the same spot. If he fails at his attempt to bribe the guards to let him choose a different door, he's still stuck in the same place having to deal with that same door. And that doesn't move us forward at all. With this one, it gets all of the possibilities that the song may have some effect, fine, but it also gives us the issue that this gets us to the next part. This lets him look at the door and examine it looking for traps, which is a good idea, very good idea. Even though that's not Dirk's specialty, that 1d4 can still come in handy. And it's probably not lethal. That would spoil the audience's fun. That is a kind of a narration guide. If I do have that door trapped, his logic is sound. That, you know, the guildmaster would have to be pretty oblivious of the entertainment value of his own dungeon if he kills somebody right at the door. Not saying that later on in the dungeon there aren't doors that are absolutely lethal, but it's good adventuring 101 right there. So those are the two responses that we've got, and with two responses, a two-sided die is appropriate. I have here a replica of a golden newt from Harry Potter. It has two facings. One side is a wizard, and the other side has a dragon seal. So, heads, we do Neil's. Tails, we do the Escapist Clubs. And I'll flip it here before you. Alright, let's see what the fate of Dirk is for this next session. That's how it goes. However, where is it? There it is. It's still random. So, I'll let you see at the same time I see. And it is the wizard. Alright, Neil. We will start working on bribing the guards and trying to find a better door. This could directly change the narrative, so alright. I'll work on this through the next week because of my schedule and things. I don't know when I'll be able to post this, but this won't take terribly long, and we'll have we'll have ManyQuest Part 2 really quick. So thank you again for both of you. I am hoping that as we do this, more and more people latch on to the idea and we get more responses. That would be great. If it's just you two, thank you. You are true Amnesians. You are those who see the opportunity and have grasped the potential for high adventure. So thank you again. And hopefully anybody else who this reaches, if you saw this, thought it was a cool idea, not too late to jump on. There's a lot more adventuring left for Dirk in his situation. So stay tuned. We will definitely be doing that. For those of you who play 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, my podcast, An Honest Wizard, is out on Spotify, Radio Podcast, Anchor, of course. If you want to check that out, I am just about done. I'm basically going over all of the ins and outs of different elements of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, starting with different uses of magic, especially cantrips, which is something that beginning spellcasters will oftentimes resort the most to because they're essentially free. But the thing is, for a lot of, especially new players, they look at an option and they just see what's written on the page without thinking about all the different uses that could potentially come about from some of these spells. Which means your hands are tied a little bit as you're playing because you're not getting the full potential out of some of your abilities. And also, some dungeon masters who are running these games may not appreciate some of the ways that players might tinker and think things through on some of these abilities. I'm going to hitch up my old-timer suspenders, but back in the day, when it was basically you and whoever else was with you against the dungeon, as outlined by the dungeon master, you had to use everything that you had and sometimes come up with new uses for things to get by everyday challenges. And sometimes those things that were in the rules didn't spell out or outline things to the T, so you had some wiggle room, and you had, it was almost like finding exploits. But realistically, it was also a matter of, learning the tricks of the game that you grew to love and figuring out how to survive when it seemed like the entire dungeon was out to kill you. That included things like the ubiquitous 10-foot pole and many, many uses. For many people, it was like, okay, I'm going to tap the floor and check for secret doors. But a lot of people didn't think, well, this pole can be cut so you can actually have 2 5-foot lengths. That's more convenient for you. Or you can construct things out of it. You can burn it if you need to. There's lots of options besides just prodding things at a distance and tapping the floor listening for traps. So spells work a lot the same way. And if you're a dungeon master who is strictly literal by the book, your players may have a little less fun if they're the kind who like to free think and conjure up things. That's the purpose of my podcast, An Honest Wizard, with this is in the voice of my Lord Cadrian de Flynn, and he basically talks about this magic and different ways that, coming from my own personal experience and imaginings on how I could imagine players getting a hold of this spell might try to use it. A simple spell like the one that I just did, Control Flames from Princes of the Apocalypse, at first glance seems to be a fairly useless spell. It's good for firefighting and not much else, supposedly, but I put in several ideas, including possibly using it to attack flame monsters like elementals, or possibly using it to quench larger fires just in small doses, so it's not instantly snuffed out, but if you can use it to fight 5 feet worth of fire at a casting, you will eventually save the house, or at least stop the fire from spreading. So just my musings, and if you enjoy 5th edition, eventually I'll go on to other topics in 5th edition. That is primarily what I'm going to be focusing on, so I hope you enjoy that. Feel free to look it up on any of your podcasting or listening software that you like to use. Lots of other things going on. I'm working on making up more videos, so hopefully we'll get those out for you real soon. My work schedule kind of got a little crazy, so I don't have a lot of free time right now, but we'll get to that as soon as I can. Thank you very much for sticking with me. A special heartfelt thanks go out to Neil and the Escapist Club for giving me responses, for playing my game, and giving me the ability to move forward. I do appreciate it tremendously, and I hope that we get more people playing real soon to make this an interesting game. Alright, thank you, and I will talk to you next time I decide to crawl in front of the internet. Farewell.